Washington Post. Recently, he sat down with Gwen Ifill at Busboys and Poets, a restaurant bookstore chain in the Washington, D.C. area.
Peter Slevin, thank you for joining us.
It's a pleasure to be here. Thanks.
In this book, you say that at one point Michelle Obama described herself as a statistical anomaly. As you were putting together this history, the story of her life, what did you find out?
What I found was that Michelle Obama came from a working class family on the south side of Chicago. She lived in a small apartment. Her parents had not gone to college, and the odds were kind of stacked against her. And then she managed to find her way to a magnet school, to Princeton, to Harvard, and to a position of some influence in the country.
Let's talk about this. She wasn't like a poor, underprivileged child. She had piano lessons and she rode her bike everywhere, she and her brother. She had some advantages, but pretty middle-class existence without a lot of money.
She really did. She had a stay-at-home mother, something that she points out a lot. She was extremely close to her father, who worked at the city water plant. And he did shift work, but he was available to her.
Fraser Robinson.
Fraser Robinson. He worked at the city water plant, and he was there for Michelle and for her brother Craig. She had a very large extended family. They were very close geographically on the south side of Chicago, and they were also very close personally. She got advice from people. She had role models in her life. She saw a path forward.
There seem to be several threads that run through this book. One is the story of her childhood and her upbringing and how it created who she was. The other, which I found interesting, was the thread of race. All the way from before she was born in her family life, through her childhood in Chicago, through her time at Princeton and at Harvard, and even in her time in the White House.
Michelle grew up at a time in Chicago. She was born in 1964, the year the Civil Rights Act was passed. She grew up with parents who had not gone to college, with grandparents who came in the Great Migration from the South to Chicago. Both of her grandfathers experienced racism. She often said of one of her grandfathers that if he had been born white, he would have been a bank president. Her other grandfather was a man who couldn't get a good job as a carpenter in the city of Chicago because he wasn't allowed to join a labor union.
But did that history scar her, or did it shape her, or is she no longer that person?
I think there was a fundamental tension growing up, something that she experienced in her household, which was not at all uncommon, that on the one hand she learned that the deck was stacked a little bit, that there was a great deal of inequality, but that very same grandfather, who did not become a bank president, or as his relatives called him, professor, he worked in the post office, he said, you know, Michelle, your destiny is not determined on the day you're born. Get on with it, get an education, everything is possible. She heard that from her parents too.
She was a career woman. She was what she called a mom-in-chief.
Right.
And now is a first lady, which is always a murky definition anyhow. How are you? What's a first lady? And how much of this has she shaped herself, and how much of it has the world forced on her?
She's chosen to play a very dynamic role, even if at first she was very sort of careful and very strategic. And she focused on things that she cared about, and they're pulled together by some of those experiences she had growing up and as a professional in the south side of Chicago.
Many first ladies, their role is also to be some sort of counterpart, flip side of their husband. And in her case, her husband is known as being kind of opaque. You know, people say cool, and she is not considered to be cool in that way. And I wonder if part of her role is to fill in those gaps for Barack Obama.
Friends say that their relationship is very close in that way. She's very direct. And yet at the same time, she says, you know, every night he walks in the door, he doesn't need to hear me telling him what to do. It's clear that she's a close advisor to him, she's a real partner to him as well.
But her trajectory has been interesting. She's gone from where we discussed, where she came from, now to being kind of the champion of good health and healthy eating and dancing with Jimmy Fallon, you name it. That was all very well thought out. It didn't just evolve.
We think of her as doing a lot of mom and apple pie stuff. But if you look at the heart of each of her issues, if you think about her education initiative, Reach Higher, it's targeting disadvantaged kids. When you think about school lunches, 70% of kids who buy school lunches at public schools buy them at a reduced price. And even if you think about the Military Families Initiative, the vast majority of soldiers who are leaving the armed forces, in fact, only have a high school education. So she's also subtly trying in a small way to kind of unstack the deck, I think.
After all the friends, all the family you've talked to for this book, any indication what she does with this?
What everyone says is that she herself is figuring it out. She has said that she'll do some writing, she has said that she will continue to work on education. One of her roles that she's taken on through her life has been as a mentor, and I think if you look at the group she's speaking to, it's often girls, often teenagers, trying to share a message with them, and she has said that she wants to keep pushing those kids in some ways the very same way she was pushed herself.
Peter Slevin, the author of Michelle Obama, A Life. Thank you very much.
Thank you for having me.